everyone and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to be ranking all of my Makeup Revolution palettes from my least favourite all the way up to my favourite. So I've got 12 different Makeup Revolution palettes and I'm going to start with number 12. So this is my number 12 ranked Makeup Revolution palette, and this is the Courage Wild Animal palette. And the reason I have ranked this one at number 12, I have to be honest with you, is because I haven't actually used this one yet. I do think that the packaging is quite nice. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of animal print, but it's okay. And this is what the shades look like. The colour story kind of reminds me of the Garden Variety palette from Colourpop in some ways, with there being some like greeny, browny, pinky tones. It is very heavy on the shimmer side, and yeah, to be fair, it's probably why I haven't really used it yet, because it is quite shimmery and I prefer to reach for a palette that I can do my entire look with, and I don't tend to do an all shimmer eyeshadow look. I obviously can't really pass any comment on the performance of the shades, how pigmented they are, the colour payoff or anything like that, because as I said, I haven't used it yet. So maybe once I finally give this palette a go, things will change and it might make its way up my ranking. And moving on to palette number 11, and it is this one here. I feel like it quite matches my outfit today, and this is the Neon Shadow Palette Electric Dreams palette, and I have had quite a bit of use out of this one. These kind of gold shades here are really nice, and this yellow is actually quite pigmented for a yellow, but again, I don't really find myself reaching for this palette all too much. It's not really a colour story that I'm drawn to on a daily basis, but the shadows do work really well. It is a good Makeup Revolution formula. It's quite a nice little size 9-pan palette, so nothing too dramatic. I do kind of wish it had a mirror in it though. That is always one of my kind of up there things for a palette, because if you're going away or something and you just want to take a palette, it's always great to have a mirror. But very pretty. I think I picked this up actually on ASOS on sale pretty cheaply, so I'm not too bothered that I haven't had a tremendous amount of use out of it. And then on to palette number 10, and it is this one here from I Heart Revolution, and this is the Angel Heart palette. And I do quite like this style of packaging. This kind of way it folds open I think is quite nifty. Again, it hasn't got a mirror in it, which is why I've ranked it kind of a bit lower than some of the other palettes, and it has got quite a pretty colour story actually. Definitely some shades that I think could be quite sultry or good for like a date night, kind of these darker pinks here, and then some more good everyday shades on this half of the palette. I do like this one. I do like the formula. It is really good, but again, it's just a colour story that I don't tend to reach for as much as some of the other higher ranked palettes. Yeah, the formula's good, shades are good, just there's other palettes that I prefer over this one. And my number 9 palette is another little 9-pan, and this is from the Friends X Revolution collaboration. As you can see, this is the Joey palette. So I do really like the packaging. It's very fun. I've been rewatching quite a lot of Friends recently, so yeah, I don't know, it's just fun, isn't it? You've got pictures of the apartment and Joey's chair. Opening up the packaging, it's reflected the same on the actual palette as well. So this palette does have a mirror, which is great considering it's just a small little 9-pan palette, and that is all of the shades. So they're obviously all related to Joey, and if you've seen Friends, of course, you will get the references. So the reason I've kind of ranked this one at number 9 is, again, just not a colour story that I'm really crazy about. It is very pretty, I think more so maybe for the summer, and I don't know which one it is. I think maybe it's shade JR. I didn't get an awful lot of colour payoff from. Definitely a couple of shimmers in this palette that I thought weren't Revolution's best shimmer formula, and I've definitely had better palettes from Revolution, then I have this one, which probably leads quite nicely actually onto palette number 8, which is from the same collaboration and the same collection, and it is the Chandler palette this time. So again, you've got a picture of the door to the apartment, probably not quite as interesting as the inside of the apartment, but there we go. Of course, the same on the actual palette itself, and we've got a mirror again in this one, and then these are the shades in this one. So the reason I ranked this one just one above the Joey palette is because I do prefer the colour story of this palette. I definitely tend to reach for pinks, greens and blues more, and I find at least with this palette you could create like a very distinct pink look, a distinct green look and a distinct blue look, whereas with the Joey palette it was all a bit all over the place, a bit kind of tropical themed without there being some definitive looks. And again, the shimmers in this palette just I don't think are the usual standard for Makeup Revolution. They are okay, but it is quite hard to get a real good colour payoff from them. I don't know what it is, whether they use a different formula for these Friends palettes, I'm really not sure. But yeah, I've just had better palettes again from Revolution than I have the Chandler palette. So moving on to palette number 7, and this is another one from I Heart Revolution, and the packaging of this one is so fun. So it's got all this glitter and sparkly hearts, almost like sparkly confetti, which I just think is really quite fun. And this is their Starry Eyed palette, so it is quite chunky, like made of plastics, quite a chunky 9-pan palette, but it does have a really good mirror in it. Actually, the whole size of this is a mirror, which I think is really excellent. And this is the colour story, so they are all shimmers, but I do quite like the mix of the more neutral tones with the blues in this palette. It's not a palette I reach for all of the time, but when I do, I really do love it a lot. And I think as well, the fact it's got a big mirror and all of that glitter on the outside has kind of pushed it up the rankings for me. I really just wish there was more than 1 or 2 matte shades in this palette. I think the only mattes are this blue and this one at the top here, but nonetheless, they are very pretty shades. These two here are actually more similar than they look in the pan now, but it's a great shade. The shimmers of this palette are definitely light years beyond the shimmers in the Friends palettes, which is really quite disappointing because the Friends palettes are much newer. So I really wish that they'd use this I Heart Revolution shimmer formula for those palettes. So we're about halfway now, and palette number 6 is the Revolution Forever Flawless Ice palette. So I really like the packaging of the Forever Flawless palette. I like the metal tin, I like the raised embossed writing, and again it's got a good sized mirror in it, which is what I want from a palette. And it has got a lot more shades in this time. So this palette has got 18 shades. The pan size is actually pretty good without kind of making the palette too big. This is a good size palette to take away on a trip. It's very easy to just pop into your bag. I do like the range of blues in here with some of those neutrals again. This silver here, Glacier, is really, really pretty. And I would liken this as like a drugstore dupe of the Jeffree Star Blue Blood palette. I think a few months ago I did actually do a comparison of the two. So if you like the look of Blue Blood but haven't really got the budget for it, then I would definitely recommend this one as a good dupe. I like the formulas of the Forever Flawless palettes. The reason I've just ranked this one kind of middle of the road is because the colour story itself is quite limiting, and the other palettes you'll probably see are, I don't know, you're just able to create some more looks, some more everyday looks. There is quite a lot of blue in this, whereas the other palettes you'll see that I've ranked higher just have got a bit more of a variety, which has kind of left this one middle of the road. But I do love it, doesn't mean I don't. I think the Forever Flawless palettes are absolutely excellent. And then moving on to palette number 5, and it's actually the biggest Makeup Revolution palette I own in terms of size, and it is this one here. So this is from, I think, their first Friends collaboration. This is the Take a Drive palette. I like the packaging. It is really fun. I like that it's the taxi. I don't know, it's just very eye-catching. It's all kind of raised up as well. I think the attention to detail on this is definitely more than like the second time round palettes with the Joey and the Chandler palettes. So opening it up, it has got a pretty decent sized mirror and it has got quite a lot of shades. So I like that this is quite a neutral palette aside from some of the ones on this bottom row. I've created so many really just simple yet like pretty everyday looks with this palette. The shimmers in this one are really excellent, so I don't know whether they changed it for the next release of the Friends palettes, but I really wish they hadn't, because these ones are really good. The mattes have got a good payoff. The shimmers are shimmery and buttery. I really like them. I like this kind of little curveball here of this blue and just some more grey tones. I just think, yeah, it's just a really nice palette that I've had an awful lot of use out of. You can see how filthy the palette is with loose shadow, and yeah, I just think this one's really excellent. And on to palette number 4, and I think it's one of my newest Makeup Revolution palettes, and it is from their DC Marvel collection, and this is the Joker palette. So this is the only palette that I picked up in that collaboration. I just thought the packaging of this was really fun, very eye-catching, and out of the £9 palettes from this collaboration, I thought this one had the most interesting colour story. So the actual palette itself has got the same packaging, and it's the same kind of cardboard packaging as the Friends palette. So opening it up, I've got quite a nice mirror. The only thing is that the shade names aren't actually written on the palette. They're just on this bit of like plastic that I feel I have to save, which is a bit annoying to remember what the shades are called. And I really love the shades in this palette. I like these kind of sunset shades. These two shimmers are really pretty. Like, it's a bit more of a grungy palette, which I quite like. The only disappointing factor about this palette is this shade here just has gone a bit weird. I don't know why. I had only used it a couple of times and it started almost to like fall apart, which is really disappointing. But the other shades in the palette are great and I do really love it. So we're now on the top 3 Makeup Revolution palettes in my collection, and number 3 is another I Heart Revolution palette, and this time it is the Unicorn Heart palette. So I did get this at the same time as the Angel Heart palette, but I just really love this one. I think the color story is absolutely gorgeous. So opening it up, it is all these really pretty like pinky purpley tones. I cannot tell you how many times I have used this palette. Well, you can probably tell because it's covered in loose eyeshadow, but there's a really distinct shift in this shade here. I don't think they have, no, they don't have names, but this one here has got a really lovely like pink bluey purple shift. It is, I don't know, it wasn't what I was expecting because this is quite a cheap palette, and I love all these other purples. These are the 4 shades I tend to use the most, but they are all really gorgeous. A couple of little nice kind of bronzy tones, kind of bright pink. I just think the formula is outstanding. I reach for this palette pretty much a lot of the time. It's just, I don't know, there's just something about it I'm really drawn to. It's quite a different colour story than anything I own or anything I'd seen before, and I think the formula is great and I love the shades in it. So the second place palette out of all of my Makeup Revolution palettes is the Forever Flawless Fire palette. So again, the packaging is outstanding. I love this fire effect. I love the metal tin. I like the raised embossed writing and good size mirror, and this time I'd say much safer colour story. These really lovely autumnal shades. I use this palette a lot over like the autumn season to create some not only some nice neutral just browns and golds, but also going in with like the bright orange and the red and the yellow. I think the mattes are really pigmented. I've used them all and none of them have been like chalky or flaky. The shimmers have got a really gorgeous vivid colour payoff, which I love, and considering the palette is only I think about £12, the formula's outstanding, and yeah, this is why this is my number 2 palette, and probably what you all want to see, and it is which Makeup Revolution palette I have ranked number 1. So my number 1 Makeup Revolution palette is the Friends We Were On a Break Forever Flawless palette. So yeah, you can see I've got a real big love of these Forever Flawless palettes from Revolution. I like, again, the packaging. You've got the mirror from the apartment, you've got the embossed writing just down here, you've got your big mirror, and this time there's just a real variety of shades, which is why this is my top Makeup Revolution palette. It's got the outstanding formula of the Forever Flawless palettes, which I adore, but it's also got a really varied, bright and vibrant colour story, which is also what I want. I did actually take this palette away on a trip. This is the only palette I took with me, and I created like 2 weeks worth of different eyeshadow looks with this palette. There's pretty much everything. I think maybe the only thing it's missing is a red, but apart from that, I just think it's a gorgeous palette. The mattes are beautiful, the shimmers are beautiful, this yellow is great. I love that there's like almost like a corresponding shimmer to matte, so you've got like the yellow shimmer, the yellow matte, the orange shimmer, the orange matte, like the pink shimmer, the pink matte. So it's quite good to be able to pair together for quite a lot of different looks, which is I think is another reason why this palette has made my top spot out of all of my Makeup Revolution palettes. So let me know what your favourite Makeup Revolution palette is, whether you own any of these palettes and you agree with my order of my palette ranking. I'd really love to know. But as always, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give the video a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, and if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you again in my next video.